Santa Claus came today in May. His schedule's a bit off, but he was dressed as a UPS man just to throw me off. So let's see what we got, eh? That's a little preview for something else. And here it is, all the way from Canada, eh? Let's break into here and see what we got. Looky here. Technics. And they even sent me some fancy stickers. Wasn't that nice of them? Let's see what we got. Alrighty. That's gonna have to end. Maybe we'll switch to okie dokie then. We got all my gaskets. Head gaskets, base gaskets, reed block gaskets, exhaust gasket. That's about it. It's a Bubba Gump impression for you guys. It's not good. I didn't stick my bottom lip out far enough. We got piston rings and a wrist pin. And a cylinder with a piston already in there. Ain't that something? This is standard bore, unfortunately. I wanted the big bore, but I couldn't justify the expenditure at this point. Okay, I figured I would show you guys the difference between the factory Yamaha cylinder, which is the old dirty one on the left, and the aftermarket, I'm assuming it's made in China, cylinder on the right. Now, this is the intake. This is where the intake, the reed block bolts on. And just look at the difference in the casting and the ports and everything. So first of all, if you can see how smooth the stock transition, you know, this is all just dead space anyway, but it's all pretty smooth and it leads down. And sorry, this port is nice and smooth and oval shaped. Not a lot of casting flaws sticking out. It's a nice smooth transition. Then you come over here to this cylinder and it's real rough. It's not a smooth shape. It's very jagged. There's huge pieces of casting down in here where the pencil's touching. You can kind of see it right there, right in there. Even the parting line. Look at the parting line for this casting. Goes straight down the middle. And it's like the two halves didn't quite match up. That's why there's a height difference on this side versus this side. It'll still work. There's no question about it. It's going to work. I'm just concerned about the performance differences, which there will be some. Now, I may not feel them, but there's no doubt these two cylinders will perform differently. And if we tilt them up and look down at the transfer ports down on the cylinder, let's see if I can hold this up. If you'll notice, the transfer ports for the Yamaha cylinder are nice and smooth. They're roughly the same shape on both sides, the same area, volumetrically speaking. And now, this cylinder, that one side looks okay, looks about like the factory ports, but then over here, these ports are misshapen and there is casting flaws all around it. Now, I've never ported a cylinder, have no experience with it, but I'm certain I could improve the flow characteristics of this cylinder. It's that bad. And then now we move on to the exhaust, which is kind of the big reveal. So there's the exhaust for the factory cylinder. It's actually a round hole. And it steps down once you get below the hole a little bit, but not too drastically. Now the aftermarket cylinder is a different story entirely. It looks kind of like a funky sloth face with the eyes there and the mouth. that's gonna have to make a huge difference in performance. I'm gonna run it anyway, just to, you know, I've already ordered it, I may as well just see how it does. And you know, maybe I can play around with porting on this thing. Maybe that's something I can learn. One other difference I noticed is this is the replacement piston. Here's the factory piston. Now, as far as the ports on the piston and everything, they look about the same. Everything lines up. The pins for the rings are in the same places. However, if we come down and look at this angle, and let's put a backdrop up here so we can see. Okay. You see the difference? Look up here, look up here, look up here. This is the intake side of the factory piston. See how it's slightly domed? Right there, it kind of drops off down to the exhaust port. The aftermarket piston is completely flat. So that's going to change the squish characteristics and the relation between, you know, the cylinder and the cylinder head, and when the piston comes up and squishes the fuel-air mixture. So that as well is going to affect compression ratio and the performance. So there's that. And then back to the cylinder, from a different angle, you can see the port here. This is the bottom of that intake port. See how smooth and uniform this port is in the factory cylinder? And then you come over here to the aftermarket cylinder, and you can see the parting line right there in the middle. And it's just kind of wonky. Let's take a look at the transfer ports too. Here's another view. Quite a bit of difference also in the volume between these ports on the factory cylinder and these on the aftermarket cylinder. You know, sometimes a slightly smaller port is not a bad thing because it increases the velocity of the charge, and maybe that will be beneficial. Who knows? I'm not a 50cc two-stroke scooter engine expert, but I know the basic principles of everything. So that's what we're working with here. I'm going to go ahead and run this new cylinder and just see how it does. I know the factory cylinder, the scooter would top out at 40 plus, a little over 40 on flat ground. And it would also, you know, it was real peppy on the bottom end, and it would sometimes pull wheelies. So we'll see how the new cylinder setup is, see if I can tell if it's noticeably down on power or not. If it is, oh well, that's a $50 mistake that I've made, that now I've learned something. It's always better to go with factory parts. Yeah, it's rare that the aftermarket replacements are of equal to better quality. Now that's not true with everything, but I found with a lot of things, it's always better to just go OEM for longevity, you know, reliability, and fit, form, and function. It's just hard to beat OEM unless it's a glaring flaw that the aftermarket has come along and offered a fix for. You know, that's a different story entirely. But that's kind of one of the things that I've learned throughout the years. Also, this is the factory head gasket. I don't know, but it certainly looks like it's aluminum, you know, based on the color and what have you. And the aftermarket gasket is copper. No big deal either way, just a difference that I wanted to note. And one more thing, if you look at the amount of meat on the aftermarket casting is a lot thicker through here, and this is where air will travel through to cool the cylinder. You can see the hole is much bigger on the factory cylinder, so there's also going to be some cooling differences to consider. You know, again, this is not super high performance application, so it's probably going to be okay, but there is a difference. Here's another little tip I want to share with you. Now, you get a new cylinder like this, and it looks like it's all nice and pretty and clean down in the bore and everything. However, if you will take something, you know, that everybody knows what this is, put a little bit on a clean white t-shirt, and you see This is clean. It's not stained or anything. And just give a little swipe through here. See all that black residue? That's all little pieces of metal and honing residue and everything from the manufacturing process for these cylinders. So that's why they recommend you wash these cylinders out. Anytime you have engine work done on anything, you want to wash the cylinder out with hot soapy water until a rag like this wipes clean through the cylinder. Because what you're doing then is you're removing all that particulate matter. Because this little bit of debris from the metal and everything in there will cause a lot of premature wear on the bore, the piston rings, everything. So could you just bolt this up straight out of the box and run it? Sure. Should you? Negative. You should always wash them first. So today I will be doing just that. I got me some soap and I bought a bottle brush so I can get down in there and get everything clean. I don't have any running water here at this shop, let alone hot water, which is what you really need. But what I lack in facilities, I make up for with ingenuity. Let me show you how. Got myself a hot plate, a pot, 3 gallons of water, and a bouquet, or bucket for the layperson. So I'm going to heat up some water on this hot plate, and then I'll have some hot water that I can use to wash the cylinder. So that's what I'm going to be doing here. Peace out. Okay, the water's boiling. I want to go ahead and fill the bucket up with a gallon or so of room temperature water. Figure it's not a good idea to put boiling hot water in a plastic bucket. Good thing I don't have to pee. Let's see how hot this is for S&Gs, shall we? It's about 130 degrees. That should be good for what we need. We'll go ahead and get started. Not only are we going to wash the cylinder, we're going to wash the piston and the old cylinder head too. The piston was just as dirty as the cylinder. All kind of a slurry left over from the machining process. That basically, if you were to run it as is, would be like putting rubbing compound or valve grinding compound down into your cylinder. That's just as bad as running in a dusty environment with no air filter. That will accelerate the wear on the components exponentially. So we'll put some soap on our brush. Dip our cylinder in the water. Oh, it's warm. It feels good. It's actually kind of too warm. Hot, 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 hot. And the idea is that since the sediment is going to be heavier than water, so once you rinse, once you get the sediment broken, or the debris, the sediment, the slurry broken free from the cylinder and dumped in the water, it'll sink to the bottom. So as long as you don't run your brush along the bottom of the bucket, you shouldn't be picking up any of the old debris that you've washed out. It's really hot. Some might say too hot. Too hot to handle. Too cold to hold. Call the Ghostbusters and they're in control. Let that cool off for a smidgen. We'll go ahead and check and see whether or not that did the job. Rinse some of the soap off there. So I got a white paper towel. I sprayed it down with the solvent. Let's see what we got. Looks like there's still a little bit in there. We'll wash it just a little bit more. There's still just a little bit of dark gray on there. So let's wash it one more time. Let's try this one more time. I'm going to call that good. Aside from the instant flash rust, it looks clean. So spray it liberally with some water displacement solution. Spray it generously with some WD-40. Maybe that's what I meant to say. Spray the whole thing. Why the heck not? Now, same treatment for the piston. Get this puppy as clean as you can. As with any engine assembly, any mechanical assembly really, cleanliness is paramount. Because the idea is always to keep dirt away from moving parts. Go ahead and let the cylinder head soak. I thought this kit that I ordered came with a new cylinder head, but apparently not. I am disappointed. Now the piston is aluminum, so it won't rust. Clean the soap off and try the old paper towel test on the piston. See how clean it is. Still a little bit of gray, so we'll clean it off some more. I may grab a toothbrush for this. It may work a little better. Put your toothpaste on. Get down in the ring grooves really well. Now this may seem overkill, and it probably is, but an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Still coming back kind of gray. We'll keep washing her. Still, it's amazing how much of that stuff is sticking on here. In other news, a new part has arrived for the scooter. Yay! Let's see what we got. Are you ready? Ta-da! This is a shroud to control the airflow over top of the cylinder. So the cylinder fits in there like this, and this shroud fits on there either like this or like this. Probably like that. And it takes the airflow that comes in from the fan and ducts it around the cylinder. So it just keeps it cool, especially when you have the cladding around the scooter itself. Of course, right now, the scooter is pretty wide open. But if you look up there, that red thing, that is the, let's see if I can zoom in. That's the cladding, body work, if you will. It wraps around the scooter. So when that's in place, it's imperative to have the proper ducting system installed to keep everything cool, don't you know? Also, so this is the bucket that I use to wash the cylinder, the new cylinder and the piston, and I washed the head off a little bit in here, and I also washed the head off in the parts washer. So I don't know if you can see all that grit and grime at the bottom of that bucket. The bottom of the bucket is now basically the same color as this concrete, and it should be blue. That's all the junk and garbage and the machining residue and bits of honing stone and metal and material that got washed off of those new components that are now in the bucket. So that's a testament to how much hidden junk is really in there, and it's very important to wash it off before you use it. Hope you enjoyed the background music. It's the 6th of May, so I think there's some people celebrating the Cinco de Mayo, carrying on the celebration into the following days. So I decanted this bucket, and you can see all of the junk left over, the grit and the grime. Now I'm going to see if there's any of it that's magnetic, just for S&Gs. So here's a magnet. It's clean, and I'm going to just peruse the bottom of this bucket and see how much metal I pick up. So this is just a little experiment to see what we get. Oh wow. I don't know how well you can see that. It's loaded with junk. Just look how nasty this thing is. Maybe this will clue you in. Look at all that. Now, aren't you glad that that junk is not all in your cylinder? Look at this big wad. Yeah.
Gross!